Hello and welcome into the Underrated Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Maxwell Dorn, alongside with Matt Murphy. What are we talking about today, Murph?
Hey, man, we're back. We're going to talk about a little TODD Gurley, as well as we're going to get into our top 5 wideouts. Hey, man, let's just jump right into it. A lot of things going on in Los Angeles. A lot of speculation, I would say, is going on over there. What's your take on it, Dorn?
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation going on with his knee injury, TODD Gurley. That's what we're talking about. And Daryl Henderson just keeps seeming to climb higher and higher up these boards.
He is.
His ADP's in the late 6th round now. How are you feeling about that? What do you think about him being drafted in the 6th round right now? Never playing a snap. We don't really know. Like, I read something online, I think it was on Fantasy Pros, they said that he was going to be used in, like, the Alvin Kamara type role, so they're saying that's why TODD Gurley's, like, ceiling is capped a little bit.
I mean, I agree. I agree with some of that. I think 6th round right now, just because we haven't seen the preseason, we haven't seen him at all.
Yeah.
Like, we literally have not seen this guy in the NFL. But what I did see is him at Memphis last year. He had 1,900 yards. I watched him play. He's a big play kind of guy. He can really get out there and, bust big plays. But when you look at a guy like Daryl Henderson, he's still got TODD Gurley in front of him. So at the end of the day, his ceiling is going to be a bit capped. But I do think, right now, not seeing anything is like a 7th round pick for me. So that's where I would look right now.
Sure.
But I definitely think he could climb up into that 6th round, 5th round range. I do. Just because...
Like, value-wise, you're saying that he, like, by the start of the season...
No, I'm saying by the start of the season, he could be there on people's draft boards. Just because, like, I'm under the impression what they're going to do is they're going to limit Gurley's workload.
Right.
And they're going to kind of use Gurley, obviously, as the one punch, but a 1-2 punch and kind of really work in this guy, Daryl Henderson, who I think is going to be a great NFL player.
Yeah, so how many carries do you think TODD Gurley will get this season? Last season, he ended up with 256, and then the year before that, he had 279, and then he had 278 the year before that as well.
I think he'll be somewhere around the 200 range.
200? Okay. In perspective, so that's... his rookie campaign, he had 229 carries, and he finished with 1,100 yards and 10 TDs.
Yeah, so my prediction for him is to have about 1,000 yards, 10 TDs.
Like all-purpose, or are you saying because...
No, on the ground.
Just on the ground. What about all-purpose? What do you think about all-purpose coming in?
About 1,400 yards. 1,400 yards all-purpose. 10 TDs all-purpose.
Oh, okay. So you don't think that's going to grow? Yeah, I don't know. On the goal line, I can't see him shying away from Gurley because he's so good near the goal line. So I think he's going to still use those. Because, like, imagine this. So, sure, they're using Daryl Henderson a lot, like, getting him involved. But every time they're in the red zone, now they're like, okay, you're not full field anymore, Gurley. You're rocking red zone, and he's so dynamic, and he's gonna come out with a huge burst when he's resting up like that and shit. And if he's getting touchdowns, I feel like that's the thing that can keep like a player juiced up from when they're just sitting out there and they're just getting carries.
I think he's gonna be very fresh, and I think it's gonna obviously show for the Los Angeles
Rams.
Fresh. Yeah, I think it's gonna show for the Rams in the postseason, but from a fantasy perspective, I would say it's going to show when he's on the field, he's going to be productive. I definitely think Daryl Henderson will also be productive, but Daryl Henderson's not a big back. He's 5'9", 200 pounds.
Right.
In the red zone,
exactly.
it's going to
and I feel like that's being overlooked with these other people talking about him now that we're talking about it, because even if you would put this in that like any perspective, like if you had Le'Veon Bell go to the Rams and they're like, we're just going to give you the ball 25 and in. Like, Le'Veon Bell he'd still be in a top 10 consideration, wouldn't he?
Sure, yeah. I think TODD Gurley's definitely still an RB1. Like, I'm not saying
a low end. I think he's a back end.
I'm just saying that, like, you could possibly see as far as, like, snaps, like a 60-40 split between them.
Yeah.
As far as snaps.
But I'm okay with that as long as he's getting the snaps in the red zone.
In the red zone.
Right.
And that's when I think that TODD Gurley's going to be their guy. And I think in big moments, he's also going to be their guy. So I still think TODD Gurley's an RB1. I still think that, if he's a guy that you're looking at in the second round, mid-second round,
you got to take him.
You have to take him.
You have to take him. Yeah, definitely. All right, well, let's move on and let's get right into these wideouts.
So Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins are 1 and 2 respectively. I think that's, widely considered right now. As of right now, I know it's June, end of June here, but, Devontae Adams number 1, DeAndre Hopkins number 2. The reason why Devontae's number 1 is pretty obvious. He's Aaron Rodgers number 1.
Right. Yeah.
Whenever someone's Aaron Rodgers number 1, you can guarantee they're going to be a top 5. And then if you put a guy like Devontae Adams out there as Aaron Rodgers number 1, he's going to feed him the rock. He's going to give him the ball. He's the clear-cut guy. I mean, he's the clear-cut number 1 to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you got the confidence, when Aaron Rodgers believes in you, he throws it to you in tight situations. He forces the rock to you. He looks off other receivers that are open to force him into you if he really trusts you. You saw it with Jordy Nelson. You see it now with Devontae Adams. They just live in the end zone, especially like you see him target his favorite targets in the red zone. Devontae Adams, 10 touchdown years the last 3 seasons. So, the guy lives in the end zone. Finally broke 1,000 yards this last season. I think Aaron Rodgers an MVP candidate this year. So, and they just rebuilt the defense. Like, don't get me going on the pack, but Devontae Adams is my he's my sure number 1 to start the year.
And he is, and I think a guy that number 2 has a very similar connection with their quarterback, with DeAndre Hopkins. With Deshaun Watson. Hopkins has just been a dog since he's been in the league. A guy who's obviously one of the top receivers in yards after catch every year. And the guy, when you get him the ball, he makes plays. Last year we saw it. He had over 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns. I can see him doing that again.
Yeah, without a question.
I can see him doing that again.
Easily.
I think he's obviously one of the best receivers in our game right now, and he's in his prime. He's going to be 27 this year. I think you're going to see DeAndre Hopkins, follow up. He could end up number 1, obviously. Either one of these guys, I think, as of right now, are going to be your 1A and 1B right now.
Yeah, and same with like Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. They both they play games. Like they don't sit out. DeAndre Hopkins has missed 1 game in his entire career. Yeah. That's in 6 seasons. So, I want that guy on my team, a guy that you can go to sleep at night and know he's going to be at the game. The next day you're not watching the queue all week and shit like that. So, it's just you can't go wrong with those two. I think those are the clear-cut top 2 wide receivers coming into this next season. So if you can get one of those guys, go out and grab him.
A guy we both have at 4, Michael Thomas. A guy who's still very young. He's been top 10 in his first 3 seasons.
He's about to get paid too,
and I think deservingly so. He's about to get paid, and he's just a guy 1-on-1. There's not a corner in the league that can check him. And he's actually finds himself in 1-on-1 situations quite a bit just because of how run-heavy a team the Saints really are. Yeah. But when they throw, they go to him.
They go heavy.
They go to him heavy.
Quick stat.
And he catches the ball.
Quick stat. Week 1 last year, 17 targets, 16 receptions, 180 yards, and a touchdown.
He's a dog.
Like, if you can have 16 receptions in a game, you're sitting in the top 5, 100%. Like you said, this guy's young. I don't think he could be number 1 by the end of the season. You really don't know.
Easily.
Him and Drew Brees have a great repertoire together. They love each other. They feed each other. That's how they feed their families. He feeds them. It's the bottom line. Through the first 3 games of last season, he had 33 targets.
Another guy who plays, who's played.
I'm sorry, he had 40 targets.
Another guy who's only missed 1 game in his career so far. I know his young career, 85% catch rate. The guy, when they get him the ball, he catches it and he makes plays.
He doesn't drop the rock.
And he's on a great offense. So this is a guy, when you look at Michael Thomas, he belongs in the top 5. Now, Doran, where we kind of vary, I know we've been on the same page with those 3 guys, at their respective positions. But who do you have at number 3?
I got Julio Jones at number 3. Without a doubt, Julio Jones at number 3. Looking back, ripping off since 2014, 1,500, 1,800, 1,400, 1,400, 1,600. In 2017, he struggled. He only got in the end zone 3 times. Last year, he bounced back, though. 8 TDs, 1,600 yards.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
When's the last time Julio Jones has had double-digit touchdowns?
Yeah, he's never had double-digit touchdowns. But
I think he has once.
No,
maybe
he hasn't.
Once?
He's never had it. Ever.
Never?
Never.
No.
No, never. Never. But for the most part, he stays considerably healthy. He's only missed 3 games since 2014. Mm-hmm. So, he's another one of those guys that's one of the reasons why I want to take him in the top 3, because I know that he's going to stay healthy. He's about to get a big contract. Matt Ryan and him, familiar faces, obviously, and he just gets fed. He leads the league in yards every single season.
Yeah, but he doesn't get in the end zone.
But you're not gonna find a guy that's a shoo-in for 1,400 yards every season.
A guy that's turning 30.
The yards add up. They do. They add up.
Don't get me wrong, but I have a guy at number 3 who I think is going to, he's going to have more yards and touchdowns than him next year. Or this year, I should say, and that's Odell Beckham Jr., a guy who, yes, he's on a new offense. Yes, he's not, the most calm-mannered guy. Yes, he's going to get in your face and talk a little shit. But Odell Beckham Jr. is one of the most talented players we have in our game.
What if I told you that I don't got Odell in the top 5?
I would pass this here L right to you, and I'd hope you hit it about 4 or 5 times and come up with a better take.
Yeah, he's not in my top 5.
That's blasphemous. As Stephen A. Smith would say, that is blasphemous.
Stay off the weed.
Yes, Dorn, please stay off the weed, because Odell Beckham Jr. could be the number 1 wide receiver when it all comes down to it. He's with a quarterback. He's in the best situation he's ever been in. He's with a quarterback in Baker Mayfield who's going into his 2nd season and is already widely considered, a top-tier quarterback. He's with a receiver in Jarvis Landry, who he played with in college, who can draw some attention from the defense to the point where where Odell can have some room to work. You're looking at a guy who hasn't really had a solid run game besides last year, and his quarterback was Eli Manning. I mean, the guy hasn't had a good core offense with him in his whole career, and I think it's going to show next year when Odell is out there with the Cleveland Brownies going for 1,500 yards and 12 TDs, and the Cleveland Browns win the Super Bowl. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I like Odell coming in. I think he's definitely going to be a wide receiver 1, but I just see him just dropping out of that top 5. I think he's at like my 7 or 8 in my rankings, and it's a couple factors. It's the factor it's a new team, like you said. I mean, I want to see him and Baker Mayfield work, and I don't really think there's going to be any issues because they're both super talented, but it's just going to be a little bit of a learning process coming into a new team, and there's a lot of good talent over there. Nick Chubb's going to draw some targets, Jarvis Landry's going to draw some targets, sure, and Njoku's going to draw some targets. So that's where I worry about just getting – I know he'll have over, obviously, 100 targets. 100 receptions, I don't know.
Now, what if I told you I had Julio Jones outside of my top 5?
Yeah, that's what I can't. Like, I'll take Julio Jones over Odell every day of the week.
And I'm sure you will, and a lot of people will. But what a lot of people don't understand is that Julio Jones doesn't score
8 touchdowns last year, though.
He's never, like you just said, has he never had?
Yeah, but when you're getting,
I had him at, I thought I had a stat where he hasn't had it since 2012. Maybe he's had it one season. Whatever the case may be, you're talking about a guy in Odell Beckham Jr. that just, he's a dynamic athlete. He hasn't played with anyone that can throw him the rock. Anyone. Like, his best quarterback's obviously been Eli Manning. Like, I would rather have Daniel Jones out there throwing me the rock than Eli Manning.
You'd rather have – I just can't – there's no way that I could take Odell, who's only played one season where he's played the entire season, only one.
The only quarterback he's had was with Eli.
Okay, I'm saying his health, though. Like, I'm saying he's only played one season completely healthy. Then 2015, he played 15, 12, 12, 4. So health is an issue, and Julio Jones doesn't miss games. The guy gets 1,500 yards a season and 8 touchdowns. I'm going to balance that out and take the consistency and the injury proneness over a guy who's risky.
I'm not going to sit here and say Julio Jones isn't going to have a good season. I have him probably at number 6.
Do you think he could be the number 1 wideout this year?
I do not see that happening. Just because of his lack, he can't get in the end zone. So I look at a guy like
Antonio
Antonio
Brown. But he has a talent.
Brown,
it's not that he can't get in the end zone. It's like he just has to get the ball in the end zone.
But he doesn't do it. So
I guess we'll see.
He hasn't done it, so why would I think that he's going to do it next year when he's turning 30? It just makes no sense. I would feel much more confident in a guy like Antonio Brown. Yes, he's switching teams, but I actually have him at number 5 just because he scored 15 touchdowns last year. I know, okay, he was on the Steelers. Cool. Now he's in the Raiders. Okay, they're going to feed him the ball even more. If you remember last year actually watching the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you did do that, they fed Juju Smith-Schuster more than they did Antonio Brown. So you're gonna go to a situation in Oakland.
Well, Brown still had more targets.
Yes, but if you were watching the game, like they would feed Juju time and time again.
Yeah, Antonio had 15 touchdowns, though. I mean, and my thing is because I'm
You
gonna
can do it again.
I'm gonna go over to my number 5, and it's Juju. I got Juju at number 5.
Really?
Yeah.
So you have Juju over Antonio and Odell.
Yeah, I do.
Pass the Dutchie to the left-hand side.
Pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side. Pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side.
I think Juju has a great shot at being the number 1. I mean, not the number 1 in the top 5. Sorry about that. In the top 5 easily, just because of volume alone. I mean, he's stepping in the Antonio Brown role, and everyone's gonna say, "Well, Juju was there last year to help, Antonio Brown." And dude, Antonio Brown has done it by himself for years now.
I have a very strong take on Juju.
With one, I think Antonio Brown had Martavis Bryant a few years.
Okay, but Antonio Brown is Antonio Brown,
Right? And
Juju Smith-Schuster
he's
is
31.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
He's 31.
Yeah,
He's
and
getting
so
old.
is Julio Jones.
Yeah, but Julio Jones is more consistent. He's on the same team.
He's more consistent than Antonio Brown.
Yes, with yards, he's on the same team. That's why he's going to be more consistent. This year, he's not going to be more consistent than Antonio Brown.
I think that Antonio Brown will have a better year than him this year.
No, there's no way. I'd put the fucking house on it.
Put the fucking house on it.
I
Put the
will.
mortgage, the kids, the
Put
wife,
it
the whole
on
thing.
the board.
And my reasoning is I'm going to take a guy who had 15 touchdowns last year over a guy who hasn't had double-digit TDs since 2012. Simple as that. It doesn't get much easier than that, folks. And my take on Juju is that when you take a guy like Antonio Brown out of an offense, when you take a guy said Le'Veon Bell out of an offense as well, things are going to get a lot different on that football field. I mean, you look at that top safety is going to be able to now. He's not going to have to worry about Antonio Brown. He can come down and he can worry about Juju Smith-Schuster. The backers. They're not as worried about the run game. They're worried about Juju Smith-Schuster. The whole defense can kind of game plan around Juju now. So I don't think he's going to have the same levels of production that he had last year. I do think his production will drop a little bit last year, even though, yes, he should see more targets and this and that. But the guy had, how many targets did he have last year?
I mean, 160-something.
160-something targets. He's probably going to get something like that again.
He'll probably get more than that. He had 166 targets and 111 receptions, 1,400 yards.
But I could see him having.
TDs,
I could see him having 100
and
plus
a
catches
97-yard touchdown. The guy makes plays.
But my point is that there's going to be so much more attention on him now. I do not see him going off, being a top 5 receiver again. I see him being somewhere in the 5 to 10 range. Like I think he's going to be really solid.
Juju can win you weeks though. He can.
Antonio Brown can win you weeks. He's done it before.
Yeah, I mean, but Juju goes for freaking 189 and a TD. I mean, I'm not knocking Antonio Brown. I love Antonio Brown. I think he could get top 5 talent, but I just don't think you want to talk about touchdowns. I don't think that team's going to be living in the red zone all the time. Like they're going to be playing from behind. He's going to be getting receptions, but he's not going to.
They're not going to be playing from behind, meaning they're going to be throwing the ball a lot.
Yeah, he's going to get
Antonio
a lot of
Brown's
receptions.
Going to get a lot of receptions,
right?
Meaning Antonio Brown's going to get a lot of yards. Meaning Antonio Brown's going to get a lot
Julio
of
Jones,
touchdowns.
and Julio Jones is going to have more yards and more touchdowns.
Pass the Dutchie to the left-hand side.
Pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side. Pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side.
I'll take Julio Jones on the Falcons than Antonio Brown on the Oakland Raiders any day of the week.
Stay off the weed, Max.
But and Juju, I think he's a great top 5 pick this upcoming year. Volume's going to be there. Great talent. I mean, I think you're sleeping on how talented Juju is a little bit. Like, I think he can handle the number 1 backs.
I think you've put me to sleep with these takes.
All right, well, we'll see. That's all we got for tonight, folks, on that one. Let us know what you think. Comment, subscribe, like, follow us on Instagram at underratedFF, and we'll see you next time. Mock to you motherfucking drop.
Peace.